Hey guys, my name is Zachary and welcome to another video, and this video is going to be kind of different because I am not playing Minecraft, obviously. I am playing Universe Sandbox 2. So in this game you can basically create planets, few objects, and basically just do whatever you want. It's a sandbox game, just like Minecraft. And I made a custom solar system, which I like to call the Epilogue system. Now it is pretty large, spanning over 1.5 light years across. So yeah, let's zoom into the star, Epilogue. Now this is the star controlling this whole thing. It is 2 times larger than the sun, and it's currently in a subgiant phase and is expanding. The first planet is actually a dwarf planet called Tentus, and it's 160 kilometers in radius. And the next one orbiting it is Alpius, which is a gas giant, like a hot Neptune. It is slightly larger than Neptune and is scorching hot because of how close it orbits the star. Next, we zoom out a bit to get Levin, and this is a beautiful blue-green gas giant, and it is larger than Alpius, almost twice as large actually. And it actually has a moon orbiting around it called Levian, which has a pretty thick atmosphere. Next we have Otis. This is a pretty large rocky planet. It's almost 2 times larger than the Earth, and it is green. And it has 2 moons orbiting around it, Nus and Kenke. The next planet is Tina, and this is the habitable one. As you can see, it is beautiful and Earth-like, and it is slightly smaller than the Earth. It also has 2 moons orbiting around it, Yucabon and Minatella. Next up, we have a binary planet system. The first planet is Celebi, which is also kind of a habitable planet. However, it's mostly frozen, but there are lakes scattered around the place and areas for life to settle in. And Yubenkai is the next planet. Celebi is slightly smaller than Tina, and slightly smaller than that is Yubenkai. The next planet has a kind of weird orbit, and it's called Metro. This is a pretty giant rocky planet. It is almost 3 times larger than the Earth and has a few moons orbiting around it, Faun and Ben. What a stupid name. The next planet orbiting Epilogue is Isobre. It is slightly larger than Alpius, however smaller than Levin, and it is an ice giant that is teal colored. It also has a good amount of moons orbiting around it, and a ring. I made a mess with the ring, that's what this is. Then we have an asteroid belt, which is just a ring orbiting around Epilogue. And after the asteroid belt, we have Hebi, a rocky planet that is 2.5 times larger than Earth. It is a very icy blue planet, and it has a few moons orbiting around it, Stout and Fimer. Stout, Fimer, Bullion, and its largest one, Con. Next, we zoom out a bit to come across Ubentobe. This is a pretty small gas giant. It's only 3.2 times larger than the Earth, so it is smaller than Metro. It's also a light gray giant, and it has a good amount of moons orbiting around it, Testuna, Perry Pluntippus, which is a reference to Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb, Tasket, Deacon, Ibersi, Ixa, Tustain, Minuston, Bonk, and Horda. After this one, we have a larger one, Turvanix. This one is larger than Isobre, but still smaller than Levin. And it actually has one of the largest moons orbiting around it. Arotonus is larger than the Earth. Turvanix is kind of Saturn-like because it has a ring around it, and it is a brownish gas giant. However, it also has blue bands, which makes it look kind of interesting. Again, I made a mess with the rings. After Turvanix is a giant planet orbiting called Metacassani. This one is over 2 times larger than Jupiter and has a lot of moons orbiting around it. Even though it is really cold, it has a pretty cool looking appearance, making it look like it is not as cold as it actually is. It also has a lot of moons orbiting around it. Next up, we have a star orbiting Epilogue called Epilogue Bicani, and this star has a solar system of its own. This is a small red dwarf that has planets of its own. One of them is called Eskenichu, which is a rusty small red planet, which is half the size of Earth. Slightly larger than that is Thrasku, which is basically the same thing but it's green. After that, we have the largest of the rocky planets orbiting this, called Euroska, and this is a beautiful habitable planet, and it has a giant hurricane rushing. After that, we have Naskin, which is the smallest of the rocky planets, and it has a moon orbiting around it called Lucidant. After that, we have Jolton, which is a snow planet. Pretty cool. Then zooming out more, we have a giant gas giant called Locantori, and this is 2 times larger than Jupiter. It has 2 moons orbiting around it called Orsanus and Otanus. And after that is Ventorius, which is a much smaller gas giant, and it is yellow and gray. Finally, we have Anto, which is kind of like Isobrae. It is a similar size to it, and it is blue. It has a few moons orbiting around it. After this, we have a very lonely little planet orbiting around it called Colti. This one is about the size of our moon, and it's a small yellow planet orbiting around a star. And at this point, we are getting over 10 times further away from the star than Neptune is from our sun. After this, we have a small asteroid belt, and then Tascania, which isn't a planet, but it's actually a brown dwarf. Although this one's unfortunate because I made it look pretty cool. However, the high temperature makes it pretty much impossible to see the beauties that this thing has. It also has a moon orbiting around it called Orapax, and this is almost as large as Earth, but it's a pretty cool looking gas dwarf. After this, we have a ginormous planet called Skeptio. It is a pretty colorful planet, collecting lots of gas over the years. And this is the largest planet, 6.4 times larger than Jupiter, and only slightly smaller than the largest planet we have ever discovered. It has a lot of moons orbiting around it as well. After this, we have a beautiful purple magenta gas giant called Esito. This one is also a pretty large one, being almost 4 times larger than Jupiter. Orbiting around it, it has the largest moon in the entire system, Cyfieru, which is 3 times larger than the Earth. That's almost as big as Metro, and it also has a lot of other moons orbiting around it. Next up, we have Apatia, which is a small dark lime gas giant, and this is the smallest one in the system, 2.6 times larger than the Earth. Again, a bunch of moons orbiting around it like Idella, Molia, and a bunch of other smaller ones. After this, we have Spacatari, which is, again, like Colti, a really small lone planet orbiting around the star. Next, we have another asteroid belt with a lot of other objects orbiting around it. Ori, which is about the size of Makemake and is also a pink planet like Makemake, and it has a moon orbiting around it called Mal. Then we have Minania, which is another dwarf planet and also has a moon orbiting around it. Afterwards, we have Decum, which is only slightly smaller than Minania and has a large moon orbiting around it called Hortania, and 2 other ones. Afterwards, we finally come to another gas giant, which is called Mutesto. This is the 2nd largest planet in the system, being over 4 times larger than Jupiter. It has a bunch of moons orbiting around it, obviously, like all the other ones. Afterwards, we have Sebrae, and this planet is about the same size as Jupiter, and it is Saturn colored. I like how it looks. It also has a few moons orbiting around it. One is a very dark blue one called Raint, and after Sebrae comes Eustick, and this planet is 1.5 times larger than Jupiter, and it's a pretty cool red looking planet. It has a bunch of small moons orbiting around it, and then if you zoom in even more, you get moons like Diaces, Ibele, Eucrestia, Estaria, and Esio. And in fact, Esio actually has a moon orbiting around it called Virtasto, and Virtasto has a moon orbiting around it called Gretis. So Gretis is a moon of a moon of a moon of a planet. After this, we come to 2 smaller planets. The first one, Instatac, which is 0.6 times smaller than the Earth, and it has a few moons orbiting around it, but none of them are very big. And after that comes Rodi, which is a small, icy, snowy planet, and it is pretty lonely, and it does have a small moon orbiting far out called Lubai, which is a very lime green planet. And after this, we have Moneus. This giant is slightly larger than Jupiter, and it kind of looks like Jupiter, having blue, white, and brown bands. It has no moons orbiting around it, so yeah, but still pretty cool. Finally, we have a few dwarf planets orbiting very far out: Edido, Pedis, Terran, and finally Metatron. So that was my entire epilogue system. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, have a great day and goodbye.